Trump is ruining National Geographic for me. From cocaine to oil, America is losing face. In this self-assigned book report, I will be discussing my reaction to National Geographic's cocaine article from 1989 in conjunction with the CIA's alleged dark alliance with drug trafficking, which was only highlighted by the USA's recent military involvement in two oil-rich countries, Venezuela and Iran. Overall, it contributed to the destruction of the USA's reputation and tarnished my trust in the National Geographic's motivations for publishing this article. So the article title is An Ancient Indian Herb Turned Deadly, Coca, and the author and assistant editor is Peter T. White. The photographer is Jose Azel, and the publisher is National Geographic, volume 175, and the publication date is January 1989. White's article opens with multiple two-page spreads showcasing Azel's blurred photography as if hastily taken, alluding to the dangerous journey we are about to read. Each spread is divided into blurbs that introduce the reader to the illegal industry, its overseas suppliers and domestic, U.S. customers. The deal. Emphasis on the article using quotations around the word smuggled. The article is communicating that the men pictured unloading the product in South Florida are, quote, U.S. undercover agents and informants infiltrating a trafficking network, unquote. But my thoughts are swayed by Gary Webb's expose, which led to a U.S. Senate hearing in 1996. Over the allegations of the CIA's involvement and support of the Nicaraguan Contra-rebel organization's efforts in the 1980s to raise funds to oppress and undermine the socialist Nicaraguan government. Subsequently, these efforts included the trafficking of cocaine into the USA, and specifically African American neighborhoods, resulting in a crack epidemic. The frustration. The image shows, quote, an advisor from the U.S. Drug Enforcement Administration, DEA, in Tingo Maria, unquote, lying shirtless on a bed, his face in his hands, described as fatigued. At first, I thought this was an AA advisor for cocaine addiction, someone who helps those struggling. But no, he is some local translator or correspondent for the U.S. federal agents who are operating abroad. Immediately, I thought of the DC shooter who served in the CIA-backed Afghanistan Zero unit. The rest of the blurb didn't ease my doubts about its motivations. Quote, where a US-funded eradication effort struggles against farmers' protests, widespread corruption, and unpredictable violence, unquote. Firstly, I read this as the USA agents aiding farmers' protests against widespread corruption. Am I understanding the US agents are the victims of poor third world farmers? This language, paired with the exhausted correspondent, alludes to there being good locals who are aiding US agents and violent locals who are protesting the US agents. As you can see, I haven't even gotten to the main article yet, and my biases towards Trump's America are ruining my reading experience. I was starting to believe National Geographic was some pro-American propaganda machine. However, I wanted to explore my suspicious reactions and prepare myself to identify whether this article is propaganda. The sociological face. The sociological use of face is in the context of the Chinese system of Confucianism. The concepts of mian zi, which means status, prestige, and social position, and lian, which means a sense of shame in relation to social standards of morality and behavior, but they both mean face. Quote, only people who don't care about lian will be successful, unquote. With this understanding, a person can achieve a prestigious status without moral standards, a popular quality in the Trump administration, evident in their handling of the Epstein files. Yet, you can argue the Biden administration didn't investigate the files either. The difference, I suppose, is that Trump's cronies are loud, so their actions and mistakes attract more attention. Here are some notable parts from the article that allude to these two concepts of the face. Starting with one of the most eye-catching statements from White's article and explaining that no matter how good the technology gets at sniffing out drugs from low-level smugglers, it'll never get to, quote, the heart of the problem, corruption, unquote. White reports on many instances of the elite covering for each other, from judges granting pardons to bankers objecting to any possibility of aiding investigators, subsequently refusing to snitch on elite money launderers. Enforcing anti-drug laws on only the majority and not the elite is simply a band-aid fix to the overall problem of corruption and capitalism. Contrasting the sentiment from many Colombian coca farmers about cocaine, quote, yes, it's wrong, but how else can we make a decent living, unquote. The impoverished don't have the privilege to save face. Unfortunately, these are the people who are punished the most, whether they are the farmers or buyers. Tucked away in an image's blurb are details of the MPD's tactics to combat drugs in the 1980s. Quote, fleeing arrest in a Miami reverse sting, a suspected buyer surrenders at gunpoint. Bookings show arrests from amongst all ethnic groups. Crack is not just a ghetto problem, says one officer. Suburbanites are coming to the inner city to buy it. In Miami's entrenched drug war, police see hope in these stings. Drug dealers can buy anything they want, except customers. If we can scare the customers off, we can have an impact, unquote. In 2001, Portugal decriminalized the possession of all drugs, in addition to allocating more resources to social programs. In over a decade, the country saw a decrease in drug addiction and drug-related crimes amongst its citizens. Because who knew, if you provide aid to those in need instead of at gunpoint, they get better. This makes the talks of decriminalizing drugs and the reason why this legislation was shut down even more frustrating. Quote, no members of Congress could vote in favor, lest they be buried at the next election by rivals who'd call them immoral, unquote. So there was no chance of any social programs or policies passing to help those suffering from addiction. It would ruin politicians' reputations and therefore any future career opportunities. Yet, White's final interviewee, a 28-year-old actor, states no one admits to doing cocaine anymore because it's wrong. Not morally wrong, just that it negatively affects the user's social and work life. One minute they are the life of the party, the next they're, quote, a straitjacket case, unquote. Propaganda versus persuasion. Jowett and O'Donnell argue that the difference between propaganda and persuasion lies in their purposes. Persuasion has a clear purpose, to promote a mutual understanding, whereas propaganda's purpose is concealed. While appearing factual, it is not. Its purpose is to promote the propagandist's own objectives, which are not mutually beneficial. As seen in their purpose model, communication and information play a significant role in both persuasion and propaganda. So communication is the exchange of information with the purpose of the sender and the receiver to reach a mutual understanding, or for one to reach the other's understanding. Non-mediated is where the sender, Nat Geo, A, communicates to receiver, the reader, B, about information, Nat Geo article, X. Mediated is when the sender, the US government, A, communicates to receiver, reader, B, through gatekeeper, Nat Geo, C, about information, Nat Geo article, X. Disinformation. Originating from desinformatia, the KGB division in charge of creating black propaganda, to covertly spread false information. Unlike white propaganda, which provides reasonably accurate information, but still serves a purpose, to create a favorable image of the sender or to promote a specific ideology. Whereas disinformation can be considered black propaganda, information is distinct from white propaganda because it is neutral and cannot promote anything. So here we see a deflective source where propagandist, the US government, P, creates a deflective source, Nat Geo, P1, and it becomes apparent source of message, article M. Receiver reader R perceives the information as coming directly from P1 and doesn't associate it with P, the US government. And then there's the legitimizing source, where the propagandist, the US government P, secretly places the original message, Nat Geo article M1, in a legitimate source, Nat Geo source P2. The message, the Nat Geo article, now M2, is interpreted by P2, then picked up and communicated by P to the receiver, reader R, in the form of M3, as having come from P2, legitimizing the message and disassociates P from its origination. Consequently, if the government doesn't support its citizens, this leaves an opportunity for the top drug traffickers to win favor amongst the poor. White recalls, quote, "A little girl tells me there'll be many more houses, if God helps him," unquote. The him she is referring to is Pablo Escobar. The little girl isn't in the wrong. Kitchen table politics or bread and butter issues cannot be ignored because they affect the very constituents' votes politicians rely on. Again, to repeat the coca farmer's position, quote, "How else can we make a decent living?" unquote. Further in the article, Bolivian farmers line up daily for indirect US supplemental payments for destroying coca plants. White reports that the payments are over 4 months late. Are we surprised the locals favor the narcos over the USA? Again, tucked away in another Images blurb, it reveals how messily intertwined illegal industries, communism, and American imperialism were and still are. Quote, "Brutal message from drug traffickers. A strangled informer lies on the Hulalaga Valley Highway. Clouding the issue, they placed his body over a slogan of the Shining Path, an ultra-leftist group opposed to drugs and capitalism, but supportive of coca growers, exploited by dealers and harassed by US programs. Corruption is so profitable in the region that police pay to be assigned here," unquote. Since White wrote this article in 1989, the undertones of the Cold War and anti-communist fears held by the US and Western nations are prominent. Guerrillas and narcos are often to blame for the violence and unrest the South American countries were subjected to. White never specifies the guerrillas as a part of any political movement, but he takes note of pro-communist and anti-American graffiti, adding, "Whoever painted the slogans, quote, 'guerrillas or narcos,' it's clear that these sentiments are widely shared," unquote. These budding socialist countries neighboring the USA, which had shown the military lengths it was willing to go to in eradicating communism, are stuck between a rock and a hard place. American politicians demand, quote, "Let's have a real war on drugs," unquote, urging for boots-on-the-ground military action and threatening embargoes and sanctions against any uncooperative countries. The only pushback at the time was fears that more interference would encourage communism. Are there ulterior motives? Is the USA using cocaine as an excuse to attack communism, as seen in Nicaragua and Vietnam? So, what is the US doing in the war on drugs domestically? Definitely not freaking out over suburban kids buying cocaine and terrorizing inner-city kids doing the same. The effects on the African American community aren't brought up ever, but reports on white-collar users, most likely white, and suburban residents are. With American zoning laws, those people are most likely to be white too. With all the statistics White reports on, he vaguely notes, quote, "Bookings show arrests from among all ethnic groups," unquote. Yet his language is heavy in racial undertones. Quote, "Fancy warm-up suits and athletic shoes, beepers, heavy gold chains, a BMW, young mothers smoking crack all day, sell their food stamps to buy more, and dealers with submachine guns infest low-income housing projects and enter poor neighborhoods, terrifying residents," unquote. Contrary to the users in, quote, "well-to-do suburbs," unquote, who will go into the inner city to buy drugs and how their addiction led to lying and stealing. Quote, "Crack is not just a ghetto problem," says one officer, unquote. Yet the only photograph of a drug-related arrest is of a black man. paired with the blurb detailing MPD's anti-drug tactics. We read he isn't a dealer, but a suspected buyer. Held against the ground, his hands are up in defeat, communicating compliance, not violence. But the black man is being held at gunpoint by 2 white police officers. One standing over him, gun casually pointing towards the ground, the other cop kneeling on his lower back, hand gripping the back of his neck, while the cop's gun is aimed at the back of his head. No white American buyers are pictured in the article, even those criminally charged. My concluding thoughts are that I want to believe this is what Jowett and O'Donnell call grey propaganda. It's not fake news, but it isn't unbiased. White does report on third world countries pushing back against US and UN fixes, but explains, quote, most countries just don't want to be told by other countries what to do, unquote. Understandably, they want sovereignty to decide how to govern themselves, as a capitalist democracy or an alternative, communism or socialism. I believe the latter would do a better job at solving the bread and butter issues the citizens of the South American countries face. I'm not buying that the US should be the police of the world. That isn't the truth, and that doesn't help working class citizens, American or South American, but rather the elite. I'll leave you with this final excerpt demonstrating how the elite abide by different rules than the rest of us and how they'll cover for one another. Only enforcing laws on the working class or foreign citizens from a third world country is a band-aid fix. They'll never get to, quote, the heart of the problem, corruption, unquote. Quote, how about really effective rules to stop the money laundering? Some of the world's most respectable bankers object. A veteran drug fighter in the State Department tells me, it drives us up the wall, unquote.